Hi, this is Nisha and Varun with another quick take. For today's episode, we are speaking with Niranjan, who is the co-founder of Footwork. Previously, Niranjan started FRAP, which built the largest student task force from India. FRAP then became Footwork, which now enables businesses to set up and scale their outbound calling teams at zero fixed costs. And so, one of the interesting features about Footwork is the fact that they are reimagining outbound telecalling operations by essentially driving output-based pricing, which is basically using technology to train and deploy telecalls from over 100 cities. Which sort of brings us to the topic or the focal point of today's discussion, which is essentially centered around gray collar and blue collar workers. So, Niranjan, why don't you tell us a little more about who you are, what you do, and essentially how footwork is sort of democratizing the space?
Hey, thanks a lot, Varun, and hey, hi, Nisha. When we pivoted to Footwork, the idea was to create, from Frap, which was more about side hustles and small time jobs for students, to actually, allow them to have higher earnings, and that's how Footwork came into place because we were trying to just understand what are the kind of skills that we could give people, which they can easily pick up and, in a sense, start earning a real income working from their homes or their localities. And that was the idea with Footwork. Footwork essentially is what you said, right? It's a product for companies to hire and deploy trained callers for any kind of outbound calling. And all these callers are actually people who are working from their own homes using the Footwork app. So it's completely laptop agnostic, right? So you don't have to invest in any kind of equipment. All you need is an Android smartphone, possibly a good pair of earphones, and which usually come with the phone. And yes, you're ready to just get started, getting trained as a telecaller and getting a job on Footwork. So over the last 11 months or so, now we trained over 5,000 odd callers who from 100 plus cities who are actively working and earning what we call a real income on the platform. And their earnings could be as high as like 20 to 25,000 rupees a month. And you're talking about people from really small cities and towns where the minimum wage would be probably 7,000 rupees for doing such a job.
Niranjan, though the pandemic has shown us that there's this movement that there's an increased kind of a demand, right, for blue and gray collared workers. What is really driving this demand? And if we can just spend a minute talking about what or who qualifies as a blue or gray collared worker or individual, or what's the right term, I don't know. No, and I don't want to sound derogatory or any such thing, right? So if you can just help us understand who some of these individuals are, and what has been driving this additional demand. Where are these people coming from on your platform? That'll be interesting to know.
Yep. So we can define gray collar specifically as like the lower end of white collar jobs, right? They require a lower level of skill, but there's opportunity to kind of grow into becoming better at that job and probably have a career path, right? And I think that's how we internally also define this. That this is a pathway for them, not just doing basic work, but also then say becoming a subject matter expert, driving and increasing their earnings by certain methodologies, say by earning a sales commission, etc. And with our understanding, what is happening right now is that, in a sense, uh, education and skilling has been democratized, right? There is enough access to skilling resources, and the cost of skilling has become very low. So most of the platforms that you would see today are actually open to skilling people for free, because that's not where we companies see that there is opportunity to probably make money, because that once these people get a job, there is much more value that you can drive from them. So skilling has become pretty effective via a mobile platform, via internet, and there are enough tools that kind of allow for this to happen right now. In addition to this, what has happened is that if you see, minus the last 10 to 15 years, just prior to that, there were just job centers which were being created, right? So you had the top four metros where people from around would have to come and get a job, and things started growing from beyond these areas, right? So it was Bombay, it was New Bombay, it was Delhi, it grew into NCR, and academic institutions started coming around these places. That means there were limited if you had to get skilled, professionally skilled, you had to be there. And the job market, in fact, also developed there, and that's why it became, in a sense, you were taking people to jobs. In the last 10, 12 years, what has actually happened is that you can now take jobs to people, and this was, post, internet becoming so easily, ubiquitously, in fact, available. Um, it has, as I said, given access to people to quickly get skilled and get access to jobs. So now we're seeing a different trend that's happening, which is you're taking these jobs to people, right? And I think that's where a growing gray collar segment, the lower end of the white collar, a lot of these people have aspirations to do well in their career, but just didn't have the opportunity, right? And I think that's given a lot of momentum for them, and that's actually shown them that, hey, I can actually work at the same level as, say, someone from a metro city who's equally educated, right? I can get the same opportunity right now. And I think that's the pandemic push that has also happened. This is just the starting point, right? Because now companies are realizing that they can get so much more out of this. So initially, let's take examples of, say, a research agency where they had to send someone to a particular small town from the closest metro city, but now you can quickly train someone there and in that local town and just deploy the person to get some job done. And I think that's the beauty of how the new economy is being built, where there are so many more opportunities, and the earnings that they earn, that I think is the reason why a lot of them are interested in building their skill profile and in a sense get a job from wherever they are instead of kind of traveling to a city.
So on that front, right, one of the things that I think is also important to address is the kind of jobs that may be suited and may not be suited for these people. So how do you, from a very first principles thinking approach, how do you evaluate which type of jobs are something that you can really work on with people from tier two and tier three cities for that matter? And the second thing is, how do you
Yeah.
monitor the success of a job in such delicate scenarios, if it's the right way to put it?
Yeah. So we actually built out a model internally for how the gray collar gig economy would look like, right? And there are different aspects. The first is that the job has to be standardized, right? You have to build skill in a particular kind of job. So if it is telecalling, then you have to do one particular type of telecalling, get trained for that, which makes it very easy for them to perform their job. The second is that, especially from a gig perspective, one of the advantages of the gig model that is it's very output driven. Let's say it has to be measurable whether the job is done or not. So you can just place it into the fact that the job has to have a binary outcome. Right? At the end of the day, it is done or not done, and there has to be some proof of that. And the third is that the training has to be significantly easy to get started with. Right? A lot of these jobs are the ones where you learn on the go. And there is basic training material that is broadly provided. There are evaluations, assessments that are put into place. Right? Just for an example perspective, today, if I download the Footwork app, I can become a certified caller within 3 days, right? Which means I have to go through some modules, I have to give some audio tests, I have to sign an offer letter. And once that is done, I become a certified caller. So it's fairly simple for you to, in a sense, qualify yourself for the job. Once you get qualified, then the monitoring mechanisms actually come into play, right? And that's where the second part where it has to have a binary outcome. Either the job is done or not done. And this is very specific to gray collar gig economy, right? Because if you even a consultant is probably in the gig economy, even a designer is probably in the gig economy, and which are more continuous engagements in nature. But here I know that every job, like my day would probably have like 100 tasks that I have to do. So if I'm a delivery executive, I know that I have to complete these 15 deliveries. If I am a telecaller, I need to know that I do these 150 calls. If I'm a merchandising agent, I know that I have to go to these 12 stores. So defining the output and defining that success metric is very important when you look at monitoring the performance of a particular gig worker. And now there are a lot of tools, right? So when we look at it again from a Footwork perspective, it is we manage the entire end to end. Like the tools have been built internally to know what is the performance of Niranjan today versus Vavan, right? So how not only the number of tasks they've done, but how successfully have they done these tasks. And I think these are the systems which a lot of companies will now start putting into place, right? Because you understand the power that this can be generated. And there are different kinds of jobs where this can be utilized. But they broadly have to fall into that framework that has to be standardized. It has to be measurable in the sense has to be done or not done. And the training in the beginning has to be fairly simple for you to get going. And then obviously you have different modules to upscale and give them more information in terms of how this could be done. And just to add on to that, a lot of this is coming from the fact that there is high smartphone penetration. Like the next wave of this is going to be as smartphone penetration keeps increasing, which is the growth of internet is also kind of linked to that. I think more and more people with these mobile-based solutions, because the laptop in a sense would become it's not very it will become redundant in these towns, especially if you're looking for a job.
Essentially, sort of riding on the mobility and the infrastructure causes essentially as coming down to basically, because I think right now if you look at smartphones especially, it's sort of creating the new middle class, I'd say, out of tier 2 and tier 3 cities, primarily because of this. I mean, if you look at the kind of access that they have to financial digital products and everything else, and especially most of them have been localized also in a way. So
Yep.
it's already, so they aren't digital. I mean, they aren't illiterate right now in terms of, at least, I mean, they're becoming tech literate is what my point is.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah. So again, that's been and we've seen that movement, right? Like right from the Flap days, we've seen people come online, and you're seeing traction from places that you haven't heard of before. And I think that's going to be like millions of people are going to be included into a more formal workforce than what they were earlier. Because as companies also grow, there will be more benefits, rights given even to gig workers, which they probably are not getting access to right now because it's a fast growing space. And that's where actually we've kind of coined this internal term, what we call flexi full time, right? So you have, say, 12 hours of work time that you can work within, and you can choose how many hours that you want to work. You can either say, I'm a part-time worker. Say if I'm a homemaker and I can only give 4 hours a day, you choose which 4 hours you want to work and you earn accordingly. But if I'm a fresh graduate and say from a small town in Bengal, and now I'm not getting a job, but I can speak well, I can become a telecaller, and I can put 8 hours a day. I'm a full-time telecaller. So, but I can choose, like, I want to work 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening. And the systems are put into place in a way where the monitoring becomes very easy, because you're linking it, as I said, right to the performance and how much time they're spending doing this job, and your earnings are also linked to that.
Niranjan, where is the participation for such jobs coming up? What are the industries hiring such people? And do you see that more women or homemakers, are being added to the workforce because of this? Like, is there any interesting pattern that you are noticing, or interesting trend, or maybe students, right? Are picking up more of these jobs. Are you seeing any such trend here?
Yeah, so I think I think there are two trends here. One is obviously geographically, this democratizes opportunities like nothing else has done before, right? Because you're suddenly on a level playing field. And in fact, when we, talk to some telecallers within Footwork who previously been call center employees, right, where they were working from, their hometown, the minimum wage is say 6,000 rupees, right? Because you just get paid less in those cities and towns. And now suddenly with that skill, you're able to, get a job which pays you 3x, right? And even if they were traveling to a different city, the net earnings for them are very low. So one major one major driver of this is always going to be of inclusion is always going to be like the aspirations that a lot of these people have. And that actually brings me to the second part, which is who are these people, right? And they go across. I mean, if I had to say, they go across a younger age group, say something around 20 to 30 years old. That's where we see a lot of our audience coming from. And in the gig model, like the way we think about it, there are two roles, right? One is work from home, and the other is broadly work from locality, right? So if I can become, say, a sales executive for a company that is selling a POS system to a Kirana store, but I can parallelly also work for, say, a non-competing company, and also probably have like two gigs that I'm working together on. Because once I'm on the field, I still have to drive those sales. I could do merchandising for a Unilever, or with a company that probably works with the Unilever, and get that job and get going. So I think those are the two opportunities that are being built. So you will see not only across delivery executives, but also a little more skilled jobs with respect to merchandising, with respect to, being on-ground sales executives. And a lot of companies have actually, new age startups, in fact, have used these models to drive adoption at a very, very local level. And then that defines what kind of people can actually work on this, right? So one, yes, we do see a very high women participation. If you're a student, for students, actually the last 1.5 year has been like a lot of time, right? In these cities, and then we've heard great stories about how their parents lost their job, but they had footwork, and they could make they could make enough money to kind of contribute to run the house. And I think that was, from a student perspective, a lot of these people are going to be people who say go to tier 2, tier 3 colleges. Even most of the colleges in Bombay actually don't have a placement cell, right? So I can't even imagine what it is outside. So for a lot of them, this becomes a career path where I could start off with, say, putting 4 5 hours a day as a student. If once I graduate, and that's the second part of the audience that we have, because since a lot of these students don't have access to opportunities, and there are a lot of people who are graduates but they can't get a job. This again becomes a way for them to get a job, and not only from a telecalling perspective, but there are other companies also which are hiring for these gray collar jobs, whether it's for data entry, other support functions, navigating, say, customer support, etc. Also, these opportunities are now becoming available to people from their own homes. And then when you look at a larger set of audience that is this is bringing in from, especially from a homemaker perspective, is that they, till date, the biggest blocker has been time, right? You have to spend time to go to a particular place to do a job. And this, with jobs coming to people's homes, the biggest driver has been that now you can actually work, not spend that time traveling, you spend that time also working, and you have the flexibility to work whenever you want. So you could work when your child is sleeping, you could work when the child has gone to the school, and I think those opportunities open up a lot. There's also like women participation in the job. Like we have almost a 50-50% split. In fact, women participation is higher. And this opportunity comes from the fact that you are able to now work from your own home, spend as much time that you want, and that flexibility is bringing a lot more people into the formal workforce, right? And giving them the option to kind of have more longevity in the job that they want to do.
That's nice to hear, Niranjan. So, tell me something, right? In Bangalore, there's this joke, right? That you'll see a person wearing a Dunzo T-shirt, but then delivering for Swiggy. So, how is this possible? Don't they have, don't companies have any kind of, clause for say blue or gray collared individuals? That's one. But second, also as somebody representing them, Niranjan, what should their rights be? Because this is a huge discussion.
Yeah. So I think from the first question perspective, right? There is, I mean, companies obviously do put checks and measures in place, right? But we've all been in the gap, and from a gig worker perspective, they are trying to maximize their earnings, right? They have only X amount of time that they can work, they can work for, and you want to maximize your earnings. So you would actually see probably platforms coming up where you can do a delivery for Dunzo and a Swiggy, because in a sense it's not competing in that sense for the gig worker, right? Because they want to maximize their earnings, and we feel that that is fair. I mean, you can do uh, two jobs. It's about how well you do it. Especially when the skill level is not that high, it becomes easier. When the time commitment is not that high, it becomes easier. And companies, since it's gig, you are very focused on that one task, right? Maybe companies would have they have incentives that you have to be active for 4 hours where you do 10 deliveries. So if I go out of the platform and do a delivery for another company, I may lose out on the incentive on this platform. So there will be measures that companies will surely put into place to incentivize people to, in a sense, prioritize working on their platform. And I mean, that's competition, right? It's competition for that kind of talent.
So I mean, in a way,
So,
I'm sorry to interject. So incentives is sort of directly proportional to the attrition as well, and the gig economy sort of adjusts itself based on those two parameters. Is right?
yeah. So there's always going to be a demand supply conundrum in the gig economy, right? Do you have enough people, and do you have enough work for those people. And usually we plan, the truth is that there is more supply of people who want to do these jobs, right? They want to enter the job market. And that in a sense makes it easier to kind of always have a buffer. And also it means that you can create work policies which are more flexible, right? You don't have the clock in clock out systems that traditional businesses would have. But the systems are built in a way where you in a sense have the buffers, right? You know that I need to hire 15 to 20% people more because there might be a peak at some point, and that means I will need to make sure that I deliver on that demand that is coming in also. So companies actually figure out ways to make sure that the demand is met by the supply, and the supply problem is a little easier to solve unless it's a highly skilled job, right? So that makes it easier. Coming to the second point in terms of the rights of gig workers, right? And there has been a lot of movement on this, and I think companies have also been very proactive with respect to what they can give the gig workers. Like one, and obviously you saw the vaccination drives that were happening because ultimately, in a sense, they were driving a lot of the economy at that point of time, right? Most of the things were being driven by delivery executive, whether it was food, whether it was essentials, and it was critical that we saw them as essential workers to kind of keep the economy going. But it's going to go a lot beyond that, right? They're going to get access to, uh, you know, affordable insurance. They're going to get access to affordable saving schemes. And there are a lot of products that are coming which are specifically targeted at gray collar, blue collar gig workers, whether it is, saving say as low as 5 to 10 rupees a day, to getting access to, or at least giving them knowledge about what are the say in health insurance schemes by the government that are available to them. And moreover, from a retention perspective also, for their top performers, companies would actually say that we will pay for your insurance, right? And where the job actually involves certain kind of a risk, there is an insurance that is built in within the payment mechanism that is there. One thing that surely has to be worked on in this is that how do we build a career path for these people, right? Because you don't just want them to be stuck at one place, and that is something that might not be possible in all industries. But when we look at it from our own industry perspective, which is very driven by soft skills, you can actually show them that today you're making say X amount of money, and here is how you can earn 2x in the next 5 years. And beyond that, obviously if someone gets so skilled that they now move on to the higher tier of the white collar jobs, that is a great outcome for the entire economy in the first place. That means those jobs are also being created. So I think it's a long journey, and a lot of the companies are also learning on the go about how do we work with gig workers, especially as a lot of enterprises are now looking at gig workers to drive a part of the jobs that they held in house first, right? And via platforms like ours, they get access to those people, trained, managing everything. So there is going to be a lot of movement on this in the next 4 to 5 years, where there would be a lot of more rights and more benefits that would be given to gig workers.
Very interesting perspectives, Niranjan. So yeah, I think this brings us to the close of this quick take episode. It was pretty amazing discussing this with you and sort of laying out, the lay of the land, of the gig economy that's happening in India. Nisha, would you like to add anything before we close?
Yeah. Just one thing. Though Niranjan, you did talk about it. Creating a career path and training these individuals. Because suddenly I'm just noticing one thing in the pandemic, right? Training is a topic that isn't getting the attention it deserves because everybody is supposed to learn on the job and by themselves. So there's one aspect that many organizations are missing out on, I think, is training. So if you can just spend 1 minute and then we can possibly be done.
To add
Yep,
another
yep,
layer to just what Nisha
yep.
said also, right? A lot of people, even though training is a relatively huge concept, the very first thing which is lowest hanging fruit that people are just blindly taking advantage of, sort of applying everywhere, is gamification. They believe
Yep.
that the moment you show that there's an evident gap between top performers and low quartile performers, and you gamify that with incentives and like you said, the insurance thing, all of these things, they think that the training will sort of happen by itself. In the sense, the ones who figure out the way to navigate, they will survive, and it sort of also helps them just retain the best of the best talent. But training's a lot deeper than that. So
Yep. Yeah, so I think that's I think there are two parts to it, right? So one, I think what you also said about, like, there are a lot of people entering the job force, and once they see that, that's where I get the incentive, you want to kind of game the system and get there. And or to be honest, like, even while it's a very new concept where you're applying for jobs online, like from day one of internet, there's always been an ad that you can get a job online and earn money. And I think what people get into this is with the fact that it's easy money, right? And that's why you see that there is always people who are applying for jobs to get that easy money. And I think training is what separates the people who want the easy money to the ones who are actually now looking for to get to looking at it as a career, right? And I think you will have to look at training in two parts, right? One is to actually get you qualified for a job, which could be, different platforms could do it differently depending on the skill level that's required, right? So I can give an example that right now we don't have the ability to train someone to have better communication skills. You can take someone who has decent, say, a 5 on 10 or a 6 on 10 communication skills and get them to, say, a 7 or an 8, right? But if someone, we need to teach them from scratch, it is very difficult. And I think we will surely build those tools out in the future. So I think that's the first level of training, that how do you even get someone qualified and skilled to apply and get a job, right? And there are, again, a lot of companies that are working in that space to make sure that there is the supply, a trained supply of gig workers or even general employees who could be hired. And then the second part of it is, I think a lot of, like, the gig economy platforms, what they do is it's not purely training on the job, it's a lot of assisted working, right? So we have, say, an interactive on-call ops, which is, I always say, it's like a karaoke for the script. Like, you can actually go through and navigate. It makes it very easy for you to drive a conversation, right? So you don't have to be now skilled to learn the script. We made it easier for you to actually do your job. So a lot of the work is being assisted by technology. And then there is a third aspect, which is upskilling, right? So I've done this for 4 5 months now. And is there an opportunity for me to, 1.2x my earnings to start with, right? So if I was just, say, calling on data collection first, can I do a sales call and earn a sales commission, right? And that's where you need to get upskilled, and that's where the platform comes in again and says that, hey, these are the skill sets, these are the tools, this is the content. Once you clear this assessment, you can go ahead and start earning more. So training is surely a lot deeper, but because technology can assist you very well to complete your work. I mean, imagine if you didn't have maps to make a delivery, right? It will just be so hard to go and deliver to the right place. But now you know exactly where you have to go. You know exactly what you have to say. And that's why companies are focusing on getting the basics covered, assisting on the job till they become better. And for us, a lot of feedback comes from the users themselves. I know if you had this, our life would be better. Like, I wouldn't have to spend as much time doing this particular part of the job, which can, in a way, help them drive their earnings. And in the gig economy, especially, whenever the gig worker makes more money, uh, essentially the company also makes more money. So it's always the objective to help the gig worker make more.
Very well articulated, actually. So Niranjan, it was amazing having you, for this conversation as well. Nisha, again, great hosting with you. This was a quick take by The Edge. Please be sure to subscribe and also follow us on LinkedIn for the latest updates and everything else. Thanks a lot, and keep those feedback and everything else coming to us. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.